For those of you who have been following my channel, I have covered a story about USA Powerlifting that has banned all transgender athletes from competing for the most part, right? So people who transition, it's complicated, but I think the gist of it is if you're born male, you cannot compete female no matter what. And if you're born female and take androgens, testosterone, to transition, you can no longer compete as a female. I don't know if they allow trans women to compete as men or trans women to compete as men. I think trans women are banned, period, across, trans men are banned, period, across the board because androgens are considered to give you an advantage. So they wouldn't be allowed in any capacity. But now, this is where it gets interesting. So that was the story, right? They made this ban, and a lot of people have been criticizing transgender athletes competing in their preferred gender because biological males do have advantages. For some reason, people deny science, but dudes are bigger, more bone density, they have more muscle mass. But now we have this story about Ilhan Omar. Democrat demands discrimination probe over USA powerlifting ban on trans athletes. I urge you to reconsider this discriminatory, unscientific policy. Ilhan Omar of Minnesota announced Tuesday that she had requested an investigation of USA Powerlifting for banning transgender athletes from competing in its events. Omar tweeted out a copy of a letter to the head of USA Powerlifting dated January 31st, in which she urged the organization to lift its discriminatory, unscientific policy. That's interesting. She said, I've requested an investigation into USA Powerlifting's discrimination against a member of the Minnesota trans community. Respect for human rights includes protections for our trans brothers and sisters. I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to defer to the law. I'm going to defer to the law. If the law says these individuals can compete, well, then there you go. Plain and simple. Then you're going to need people to get into office and make changes if that's the case. But I'll tell you what, this is where it's all headed. New York recognizes infinite genders. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but they literally allow you to claim to be whatever you want. Period. They officially list 31 genders. Some of them are redundant, but that you can literally go to New York. I don't know if you can request it on your ID, but I think you can just claim any gender. Like, I'm serious. Like, there's hydrogender, demigender, whatever. Like, these things are on Tumblr, okay? They allow you to do it. So I think Ilhan Omar might actually win this because they passed the human rights law. I feel like it's in a sense sort of an exploit. I feel like it's taking advantage of a system designed to protect those who need protection. Allowing a biological male to compete against biological females it's absolutely unfair. It is, and it's crazy to me that we're seeing a politician calling it unscientific. Yep, I take issue with Republicans who deny evolution. I take issue with people who deny climate change. Look, I get it. If you want to believe what you want to believe, if she wants to believe what she wants to believe, that's fine. I disagree. And I take issue with people. My stance on science is there are some things I'm an expert in. There are some things I'm not. And I defer to the experts. You might not want to agree with climate change, but if the only, yes, science is wrong a lot. It's the best we can do. It's the best we can do. So I defer to them and I say, you know what? Climate change is an issue. Let's do what we can. But I think a lot of the Green New Deal stuff can go too far, for sure. But I do like the idea of renewable energies and things like that. And anyway, I don't want to get into that. The subject matter is Democrat denying science while claiming others are denying science. Last week, the leading American powerlifting group banned trans competitors, citing that it said was an unfair advantage, biological for male to female advantages and hormonal for female to male athletes. They say USA Powerlifting is an inclusive organization for all athletes and members who comply with its rules, policies, procedures, and bylaws. The organization said in a statement published Wednesday to its website, USA Powerlifting is not a fit for every athlete and for every medical condition or situation. Simply not all powerlifters are eligible to compete in USA Powerlifting. The decision came after J.C. Cooper, a trans woman, had her application to compete in a women's powerlifting event in Minnesota denied. In her letter to USA Powerlifting, Omar suggested that the group follow the example of the International Olympic Committee, which last year introduced new rules allowing trans women to compete in men's events and trans men to compete in women's events post-hormone therapy. Wait, what? Many trans activists were not satisfied by those more liberal rules either. Wait, they allow trans women to compete in men's events. Right, okay, so a trans woman, a biological male, can compete against biological males. That makes sense. And biological females, now here's the thing. Trans men to compete in women's events, post-hormone therapy, that's going to give them a big advantage. It is. Post-hormone therapy. Omar argued that under the Minnesota Human Rights Act, discrimination against anyone based on their gender is illegal. While she does not have the power to investigate the decision, she forwarded her request to Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. It is unclear whether he will choose to investigate or not. Well, I'm going to say this. I have nothing but respect for the trans community. I have some friends who are trans. I understand that's not necessarily good enough, but I will point out this is the law. And this is, if you don't like the law, then you got to change it, plain and simple. But if this is the law and Ellison investigates, which I think it's likely he will, we are going to see biological males competing against biological females, plain and simple. And I think it's obvious who's going to win. There's going to be a bell curve, right? It's likely because of hormone therapy. The trans women won't be on the high end of the bell curve, on the highest end necessarily, but they'll be to the top. So you're going to find them consistently winning first place. And I think it's plain to see. I mean, I'm not going to argue for or against. I'm just going to straight up say this is going to take away it destroys the purpose of a league for females. Females compete in their own spaces because men can dominate them, right? That's what we have. Democrats have taken up the transgender cause with unprecedented enthusiasm. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York announced on Monday that she will promote legislation to promote trans soldiers, as well as bring a trans Navy lieutenant commander to the State of the Union address. She said the bill was a response to President Donald Trump's cruel ban on trans service members, which was revived last month by the Supreme Court. I take no issue with this at all. If you want to protect trans soldiers and bring them to the State of the Union, bravo. I commend that. That's fine. I just take issue with having biological females compete against biological males for the most part. At the same time, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has promised to use her new House majority to advance the Equality Act, a bill that would codify protections against LGBT discrimination, including special guarantees for trans people to be regarded in federal spaces according to their self-identified gender rather than their biological sex. The only question I have in this capacity is, do we have these governmental classifications for specific biological reasons or just for classification? Do we have M and F on driver's license and passports or whatever for a specific quantifiable reason, right? Do we want to know who's male and female because of potential crimes, because of certain behaviors, or is it literally just so we know who you are? Like if I had an ID that said female on it and the image looked different from me, they might question if the ID was actually mine. Is that why we have male and female? So that, if the issue is simply cosmetic, then I don't think it's as big of an issue. But I will point out this as well. I believe one thing that has been talked about a lot when it comes to trans issues is I'm pretty sure if you're not a passing trans person and you get your ID changed, you probably can't travel internationally. Probably to Europe, but it's still probably dangerous. Because think about this. When you go to a gas station to buy something and you got to be 21, they'll look at your ID. And if they think, oh, I don't know about this. Okay, well, then they don't sell it to you. That's not a big deal. When you're at an immigration, when you're at Customs and Border Protection, when you're looking at the immigration officer and he looks at your ID and it's got a different, you're clearly biologically male, but it says you're female, he's going to be like, no. Now, I'd be willing to bet a lot of European countries are going to be like, oh, okay, I understand, you're fine. But that's just European countries. There's probably a lot of other countries. I mean, Turkey, for instance, would probably be like, no, thank you, get out, There's a lot of countries the U.S. has treaties with you'd be allowed to travel to under normal circumstances that trans people probably can't. And it's really dangerous outside of the U.S. and it's really dangerous inside the U.S. So, but let's read on. However, not everyone has gotten on board. A number of trans exclusionary radical feminists, as they are derogatorily called on the left, last week sought to block the Equality Act by aligning with conservatives and in one case ambushing a transgender woman who was advocating for the bill on Capitol Hill. Omar has taken up controversial causes before. In 2016, when she was a member of the Minnesota House of Representatives, she lobbied for leniency for 9 men from her state who had attempted to travel to Syria to fight for ISIS. She was less forgiving last month when, during the uproar over Covington High School, she falsely tweeted that they had yelled that, yes, some things I'm not going to repeat. So here's the thing. It's really fascinating to me where you can see the tribalism break down. I'm not going to read too much of this because, again, I don't want to go on too long. But when she was questioned over Covington, initially she smeared them. Days later, she smeared them. I find it fascinating who she's willing to protect and who she's not willing to protect. If she goes to bat for a trans person because they're discriminated against based on the law, I can respect that. That's fine. But then she goes up and she says, like, the point they make in this article is that after she took down her posts, you know, she was threatened with a lawsuit. She was asked by someone, do you have any message for the Covington students after your tweet criticizing them for racism? Any message for them tonight? She said, the message I have for them is that in life, there are often consequences on the way that you behave. Right. Still kind of playing up that it's their fault. So it's all it is. And this is why it's like, listen, man, I want to have a real conversation about trans rights. I want to have a real conversation about what we can do to protect individuals who need protection. But what we see here is just hardcore tribalism. It's, I'm going to condemn these kids because of the look on their face, and I'm going to send out a letter demanding an investigation for this individual because they're on my side. I'm gonna stop here. Stick around. I got more videos coming up in a few minutes. I will see you then.